The Debacle at Durham, Part 3. What became of them? Although you will find Munzenberg's grave in France, the Red Millionaire had been a key figure in the golden age of the Weimar Republic as an accomplished propagandist for the communist cause. He owned or controlled innumerable newspapers, popular magazines, theatres and cinemas. If even now we recall the October Revolution through the eyes of Eisenstein, it's thanks to Munzenberg's finance of the film's concern. And the same can be said of plays and film scripts by Bertolt Brecht, art by Otto Dix, and the music of Kurt Weill. None of these would have existed without Munzenberg's liberal support. His propaganda continued long after Stalin became leader of the Soviet Union. It even increased, despite evidence of the horrific reign of terror. Munzenberg continued his systematic seduction of intellectuals, enlarging the clubs of innocence to include the Hollywood actor James Cagney and the writer Dorothy Parker. There is no hard evidence on the matter, but it was probably Munzenberg who recruited Philby to the Soviet cause. And inevitably he fell victim to the ideological disputes which dogged Stalin, to the point where he became reluctant even to visit Russia, fearful that he would not be allowed to come back to Germany. But life in Germany itself also became impossible as the country descended into madness. After the Reichstag fire in 1933, Munzenberg established himself in Paris and became a key figure, along with Arthur Ransome, in the anti-fascist movement. And on Stalin's orders, he was expelled from the Communist Party in 1937. On learning of the Molotov-Ribbentrop non-aggression pact with Hitler, he described Stalin as a traitor. In 1940, he made a series of anti-Nazi broadcasts in Paris and was denounced by Goering himself as one of the principal enemies of the Reich. And he fled Paris, but was soon arrested by the French authorities. In a bizarre parallel with the fate that befell P.G. Wodehouse, at almost exactly the same time, he was interned, although not in Poland, but in a camp near Lyon in southeast France. There, again, in a parallel which will be familiar, he was befriended by a fellow inmate, a mysterious figure who suggested the two of them should escape, taking advantage of the chaos that followed the establishment of the Vichy government. Munzenberg fell in with the idea, and on June the 21st, 1940, apparently in high spirits, he set off to see whether he could find a car. That was the last time he was seen alive. 4 months later, his body was found in woods near the village of Saint-Marcellin, to the west of Grenoble. He had been garroted. Someone had attempted to suspend his body from a tree, but the chosen branch had snapped, and he was left kneeling with the cord of the garrote dangling across his face. The French police, no doubt prudently, decided nonetheless that he had committed suicide. Arthur Ransome wrote in 1949, "He was murdered in the summer of 1940 under the usual lurid and mysterious circumstances. As usual in such cases, the murderers are unknown, and there are only indirect clues, all pointing in one direction. And what of Karl Radek? His close association with Evgenia's old boss, Leon Trotsky, effectively sealed his fate. He was expelled from the party in 1927, although readmitted 2 years later after fatally confessing the error of his ways. For the paranoid Stalin, the association with Trotsky had made Radek a traitor. In 1937, he was included in a group of 13 defendants in a show trial. The outcome was, of course, certain. But the night before sentencing, Radek was visited in his cell by Stalin himself, and the two men spent several hours in discussion. We shall never know what passed between them at that meeting, but whatever it was, it bought Radek a few more years of life. The following morning, to the astonishment of all present, he was sentenced not to death, like all the others, but to 10 years in prison. 2 years later, in May 1939, he was beaten to death by an NKVD officer on Stalin's orders. Ransome wrote an obituary for The Guardian, but it was not published. A year later, at the second attempt, Leon Trotsky himself was assassinated in Mexico.